Reacting to the tragic loss of Cosby Show co-star Malcolm Jamal Warner, first with ABC News.
He was always a great...
It's that simple. You know, I'm not going to elongate that answer. The movies are the same way he dresses.
They said he drowned. But what if that was never the truth? Because now Malcolm Jamal Warner's wife has broken her silence. And what she's revealing, it's the kind of thing that makes headlines disappear. She's not guessing, she's naming names. And she's claiming Malcolm didn't just die. He was eliminated. Before he could expose what was really happening behind the scenes in Hollywood, before he could call out the powerful people who wanted him quiet, he was gone. No water in the lungs, no signs of struggle, and a trail of threats leading straight to the top. This wasn't a tragedy, it was a cover-up. And if what she's saying is true, then someone out there didn't just silence a man, they buried the truth.
Everyone keeps asking why I stayed silent after Malcolm passed, why I didn't say a word, not even cry. But if you truly knew us, you'd understand.
But they didn't count on her coming forward, and what she's saying now is turning everything upside down. She never asked for the spotlight. She didn't post tributes, chase interviews, or show up with tears on camera. Instead, Malcolm Jamal Warner's wife stayed silent. For months, for years. But that silence, it wasn't weakness, it was the calm before the storm, because now she's speaking out. And what she's revealing has people questioning everything we thought we knew about Malcolm's death. She says it wasn't an accident, it wasn't a freak current or a tragic misstep, it was planned. According to her, this goes far beyond a grieving widow crying foul. She claims she has proof, receipts, patterns, and most of all, motive.
We'll never go.
Malcolm, she says, was being watched, followed, warned. She described late-night phone calls with no caller ID, distorted voices on the other end, threats that didn't sound like random hate mail, but like instructions. They told him to back off and to stop talking, to stop asking questions that made the wrong people uncomfortable. And the scariest part? He listened, not out of fear for himself, but for his family. Because even as he tried to downplay the threats, he changed. His mood darkened, he got quieter, more distant, and eventually, he left. He told his wife he just needed space, needed clarity. So he went to Costa Rica, alone. Days later, he was gone, and the official story, it didn't make sense then, and it makes even less sense now.
No wonder Malcolm Jamal Warner's wife and daughter are silent on his death. The truth behind it is heartbreaking. After news broke of...
But here's the thing. She stayed quiet not because she believed the story. She stayed quiet because she knew how dangerous this might get. And now that she's talking, she's not easing into it. She's naming names, laying out the timeline, and pointing to a chilling conclusion. Malcolm didn't just die, he was silenced. And what she's about to reveal next might finally explain why. The headlines were quick to wrap it up. Malcolm Jamal Warner drowns off the coast of Costa Rica. Case closed, no further questions. But there's one problem. According to his wife, the autopsy told a very different story. She claims that when Malcolm's body was examined, something crucial was missing.
A short clip has now
Jaleel White
resurfaced
walked up
that
to the
reportedly shows
podium at Malcolm
walking on the
Jamal
beach,
Warner's
but it's
funeral,
not clear who filmed this
nobody
or why.
expected what
The very thing that would prove he drowned. Water in the lungs. There was none, not a drop. And that detail changes everything, because when someone drowns, truly drowns, their lungs fill with water as they struggle to breathe. That's not just a theory, it's a biological fact. And if the lungs are clear, that means the person wasn't alive when they hit the water. Which raises a terrifying possibility. Malcolm may have been dead before he ever entered the ocean. His wife says that's exactly what happened. She believes he was poisoned, not with something obvious or traceable, but with something designed to slip through toxicology screens unnoticed. Something that would paralyze him just long enough to make him helpless.
Just hours after the news broke that Malcolm Jamal Warner had passed away suddenly at the age of 54, the internet went into complete...
Then he was pushed into the water to make it look like an accident. A clean story, a neat ending, no questions, no suspects, no loose ends. But this wasn't just a theory she cooked up in grief. Because according to her, Malcolm was healthy, strong, and most importantly, an expert swimmer. He'd faced rip currents before. He knew how to stay calm, float, breathe. There's no reason he should have gone under so quickly, or stayed under so long. And what made everything feel even more wrong was what happened next. Witnesses say there were people nearby, bystanders who tried to help. But even as they reached for him, Malcolm didn't move, didn't fight, didn't respond, almost like...
Just when fans were beginning to mourn the tragic loss of Malcolm Jamal Warner, a shocking courtroom war has erupted behind the scenes.
He couldn't. That's when the questions started bubbling up. Why would a man with that much skill suddenly become helpless in the water? Why was there no water in his lungs? And why did authorities seem so quick to shut the case? Because if the drowning never happened, then the real story hasn't even begun to be told. From the outside, Malcolm Jamal Warner looked like he had found balance. He was low-key, respected, and unproblematic. The kind of celebrity who stayed away from drama and let his work speak for itself. But behind the calm surface, something had shifted. According to those closest to him, Malcolm had grown tired of playing the game, the Hollywood game.
No wonder Malcolm Jamal Warner's wife remained expressionless after his tragic accident. Few realize the three heartbreaking reasons behind
The one where silence is rewarded and truth comes with a price. And then came the podcast. Not all hood. At first glance, it sounded like just another cultural commentary. But the more Malcolm spoke, the more it became clear. He wasn't just having conversations. He was exposing the cracks in the system. He talked about how the media boxed in Black voices, how the entertainment industry cherry-picked narratives that sold pain but ignored complexity, how success for Black men often came with invisible shackles. Speak carefully, smile more, don't rock the boat. But Malcolm wasn't interested in keeping things comfortable. And in one particular episode, he shattered the line between opinion and truth-telling.
No one noticed that Malcolm Jamal Warner's wife made 3 spine-chilling decisions within less than 24 hours of his death. Decisions that all...
He called out the hypocrisy. Why was it, he asked, that when Bill Cosby was convicted, The Cosby Show was erased overnight? Every episode pulled, every credit removed. But Roman Polanski still has films airing. Woody Allen still gets press runs. Why is it that when it's a Black man, the entire legacy is destroyed? But when it's a white man, suddenly everyone wants to separate the art from the artist. That wasn't just a hot take, it was a challenge, and challenges like that don't go unnoticed in places where power is protected at all costs. Malcolm was pulling back the curtain. He was saying out loud what most whispered behind closed doors.
So y'all gonna really sit here and post Malcolm with Michelle like he didn't leave behind an entire wife.
And the more honest he got, the more uncomfortable it made the people who never wanted these conversations happening in public. He wasn't just discussing problems, he was connecting the dots, showing patterns, naming truths. And in Hollywood, that can be more dangerous than any scandal. Because when you stop being safe, you start becoming a threat. Calling out hypocrisy was just the beginning. Malcolm wasn't content with surface-level critique. He wanted to dig deeper. And that's where things got dangerous, because he didn't just speak on problems, he named who was behind them. In one episode, he went further than he ever had before, saying the chaos in the Black entertainment space wasn't just coincidental, it was engineered.
Not my Theo. That's what Felicia Rashad whispered when she heard the devastating news. The woman America knew as...
According to Malcolm, Hollywood's most powerful figures weren't just ignoring Black voices. They were manipulating them, stoking drama, encouraging conflict, and sitting back while it played out on stages, screens, and social media timelines. All while they counted the money, Malcolm said that Black excellence wasn't being celebrated. It was being exploited, turned into spectacle, molded into entertainment that looked empowering but was actually laced with division. He pointed directly to what he called strategic feuds, the kind of headlines that blow up overnight. Rapper versus rapper, actor versus actor, Black man versus Black man.
Hold on to your seats, folks. This is the unraveling of an emotional, personal, and shocking story that most fans...
One feud he mentioned by name, Kendrick Lamar versus Drake. Most fans saw it as lyrical warfare, but Malcolm saw something more sinister. He said the beef wasn't organic. It was amplified by labels, fueled by execs, and turned into a cultural firestorm designed to distract. He believed it was the perfect storm, two brilliant minds weaponized against each other while the real string pullers hid behind press releases and payouts. Malcolm didn't stop there. He said the entire media machine had a habit of torching Black legacies the moment something went wrong, but carefully protecting white artists, no matter how dark their past. He asked why The Cosby Show was yanked off the air the moment Bill Cosby was convicted.
The news just came as a shock. He's 54 years old, first of all, and he grew up on our screens.
While Roman Polanski, a man convicted of a crime so disturbing it still shocks people, still had films screening worldwide. Why was Woody Allen still treated like a genius, while Cosby's entire body of work was erased in a day? That wasn't a rant, that was a challenge to the system. And people were paying attention because Malcolm wasn't just pointing fingers, he was connecting dots, calling out the unspoken rules that decided who got to fall with dignity and who was dragged publicly until nothing remained. But here's what made his message even more explosive. He wasn't bitter, he wasn't ranting for revenge, he was calm, precise, focused.
Lord Jesus, guess who died?
Who died? Because you told me they middle age, right?
Middle age.
That made it harder to ignore and harder to discredit. He was holding up a mirror to an industry built on silence. And worse, he wasn't finished. According to his wife, he was just getting started. And that's when the anonymous calls started, when the threats turned specific, and when Malcolm realized the fight he was picking might come with a cost. At first, it looked like a simple getaway. A few days on a tropical beach, a break from work, the industry, the spotlight. But what Malcolm Jamal Warner didn't say out loud, and what his wife is now revealing, tells a much darker story. According to her, this wasn't a vacation, it was an escape. Because long before Malcolm set foot on that beach in Costa Rica,
the death of Malcolm Jamal Warner. And if what she's saying is even half true, this isn't just a tragedy. It could be a cover-up.
The walls had already started closing in. It began with whispers, anonymous calls in the dead of night, voicemails with no words, just static or breathing or silence that felt heavy. At first, he tried to ignore it, but it kept happening day after day, week after week. Then came the messages, short, ominous, stop talking, you're making the wrong people nervous, think about your family. Malcolm was many things, but naive wasn't one of them. He understood power, he understood silence, and now he was starting to understand fear. His wife says she saw the change. He wasn't sleeping, he wasn't eating. He'd go quiet for hours, just staring, pacing, lost in thought.
IJ for comment, who reissued their previous statement that Warner's daughter was on the shoreline. There are also claims that one surfer dived in.
He told her he needed time away, somewhere quiet, somewhere far, somewhere they couldn't follow. So when he left for Costa Rica, she didn't question it, at least not out loud. But deep down, she knew this wasn't about a vacation. This was about survival. And that's where the story takes a strange turn. Malcolm didn't go alone, but the man he traveled with? To this day, no one has confirmed his identity. He was in the water too when things went wrong. But somehow he made it out. No interviews, no statements, no explanations. Just disappeared back into the shadows. Malcolm's wife says that's not a coincidence, because the man who survived wasn't the target.
You're either old enough to remember a time when Bill Cosby was a beloved actor and a very powerful force in Hollywood, or...
And if Malcolm was poisoned, as she now believes, then that moment in the water wasn't just a drowning, it was a cover-up. The beach where it happened? Locals call it one of the most dangerous spots in the region. Rip currents so strong they've claimed multiple lives. Red flag warnings were posted that day, according to witnesses. And Malcolm knew all of that. He was cautious, deliberate, especially when it came to his safety. He respected the ocean. He knew its risks. So why would he walk straight into danger like that? Why would a man running from threats, a man so careful with every move, suddenly throw away his instincts and his life? It doesn't make sense. None of it does.
What show did you have on NBC for half a season?
Oh man, it was trust me, you're not a failure. They dicked me on that.
And what makes it even more disturbing is the absence of any real footage. We live in a world where everything is filmed. Tourists record strangers on beaches for fun. Accidents go viral before the sun sets. But here, nothing. No videos, no photos, no eyewitness interviews. It's like the moment Malcolm died, the lens of the world snapped shut. And for his wife, that silence is the loudest clue of all. Because if Malcolm had lived, he was ready to talk, really talk, and the people who'd spent so long silencing him. They knew it. She believes he was being watched, followed, tracked. Costa Rica wasn't a vacation. It was the last place he thought he could breathe.
Now we finally have an update on the drowning death of Malcolm Jamal Warner. Now, according to ABC7, they stated that Malcolm Jamal Warner had drowned.
But someone made sure he never came home. They called it a tragic accident. Said he got caught in a rip current, drowned, end of story. But once you start peeling back the layers, the official narrative starts to fall apart. Fast. Let's start with the basics. The beach where Malcolm died was notorious. Locals say it's one of the most dangerous in the region. Strong currents, shallow breaks. Red flag warnings were flying that day, warning swimmers to stay out of the water. Malcolm wasn't some reckless tourist. He was experienced, careful, and according to multiple sources, a strong, trained swimmer. He knew what red flags meant, and he knew how to survive rip currents. So the first question becomes,
the Warners, they were like the best case scenario for what it could look like being not only a...
Why would he even step into that water? His wife doesn't believe he did. She says Malcolm wasn't acting like himself before the trip. He was paranoid, on edge. And that morning, there was no indication he even planned to swim. But somehow, minutes later, he's in the water, alone, not responding to bystanders, not calling for help, not fighting to survive. Multiple witnesses tried to help him, and they say it was like he was already gone. And if that's not strange enough, then this detail will stop you cold. The autopsy allegedly found no water in his lungs. Think about that. A drowning victim with no signs of drowning? That's not just suspicious. That's physically impossible.
A short clip has now resurfaced that reportedly shows Malcolm walking on the beach, but it's not clear who filmed this or why.
No struggle, no gasping, no inhaled water. It's as if he was unconscious, or worse, before his body ever hit the ocean. And still, the story stayed the same. Accidental drowning, case closed, except it wasn't. The Costa Rican authorities claimed an autopsy was performed. But as of now, the full report has never been released. Not to the public, not even to Malcolm's family. How is that even possible? If this was a simple, tragic accident, why keep everything sealed? Why block access to basic documents? Why keep Malcolm's wife, the person closest to him, in the dark? It doesn't add up. Not the timing and not the silence. Not the clean, media-friendly story that was handed to the world.
Just hours after the news broke that Malcolm Jamal Warner had passed away suddenly at the age of 54, the internet went into complete...
And then came the final twist. A short, grainy video that surfaced out of nowhere. It allegedly shows Malcolm alone walking the beach just hours before he died. No context, no sound, no explanation of who filmed it or why. But what it does show is that someone was watching him, and suddenly all those unanswered questions start pointing in the same direction. Because this wasn't just a drowning, this was a cleanup. And the more his wife speaks, the clearer it becomes. Malcolm's death doesn't look like an accident. It looks like a message. At first, it seemed random, a quiet moment on a beach, a man walking alone.
Hollywood is bursting with an outpouring of grief at the sudden, unexpected passing of Malcolm Jamal Warner, who touched...
But the more you watch the footage, the more unsettling it becomes. Because the question isn't what Malcolm was doing that day. It's who was filming him and why. The short clip, which surfaced only after his death, shows Malcolm pacing slowly near the water's edge. No friends in sight, no conversation, just him and the lens. There's no official source tied to the video, no metadata, no news coverage. It's like it was never meant to be seen. And yet, here it is, proof that someone was watching him before he died, tracking his movements, recording them silently. His wife believes it wasn't a tourist who captured that footage. It wasn't random. It was surveillance.
Fans around the world are reeling from the shocking news. Malcolm Jamal Warner, the beloved star who once lit up our...
Because by then, Malcolm had become more than a cultural voice. He was a threat to systems that thrive on secrecy. And right before his death, she says he was getting ready to go public. Not just with ideas, but with evidence. She claims Malcolm was preparing to name names, to expose everything from racial double standards to systemic media control, and that his final podcast episodes were more than just commentary. They were warnings. Looking back, fans agree, and they say he was different in those last recordings. Measured, intense, almost like he knew something was coming. He spoke about how the media dehumanizes Black men.
I don't know about swimming.
Bill Cosby is speaking out.
How they're boxed in, criminalized, and stripped of their voice when they refuse to play the part. He said silence was rewarded, and truth came with consequences. He wasn't speculating, he was testifying. And when you look at how clean the official narrative is, how conveniently the media framed his death, how quiet the industry stayed afterward, you start to wonder if that silence was just sadness or strategy. Because this wasn't the first time an outspoken Black artist vanished under strange circumstances. And if Malcolm saw the pattern, maybe he knew he'd be next. Maybe that's why he ran, maybe that's why he hid. And maybe, just maybe, someone made sure his voice was the last thing to go quiet.
Well, I mean, the real, it hit us all financially. Because now we weren't getting those residuals.
In his last podcast episode, Malcolm didn't raise his voice. He didn't shout, he didn't accuse. Instead, he reflected. But that calmness, it wasn't peace. It was the quiet before the storm. He spoke about the Black community, how it's constantly misunderstood, flattened into a stereotype, treated like a monolith. He said there were many lanes, many lives, and that the media only showed one. The most painful one, the most profitable one. He wasn't just making a point. He was painting a target. Malcolm said Black artists weren't just marginalized. They were monetized, their stories twisted, and their pain recycled for profit.
The next day, all of the headlines read, Malcolm Jamal Warner says the legacy of the Cosby.
He called out the way men like him were boxed in, told to be silent, obedient, predictable. And when they broke out of that box, it's when they told the truth. They were punished, stripped of dignity, erased from legacy. He didn't say names, and he didn't have to. The message was clear. He saw what was happening, and he was preparing to expose it. According to his wife, Malcolm was finalizing something in a project, a speech, maybe even a full-on expose. She says he was done playing nice. He had the stories, the facts, the receipts, and he was ready to put it all on the table, no matter the risk. But just before he could take that step, he drowned, just like that, gone.
Oh God, how tragedy. Passed away at 54.
And now, with no public autopsy, no real footage, no accountability, the only thing left is his voice. But here's what makes that voice even louder in death than it was in life. He warned us. He warned us about the systems that punish truth. He warned us about the double standards. He warned us about what happens when you try to challenge power without protection. And if you go back and listen to his final episode, knowing what we know now, it doesn't sound like a message. It sounds like a farewell. A quiet, desperate attempt to leave us with something before the silence came. And now, the one person who truly knew him, his wife, is carrying that message forward.
We have some very sad breaking entertainment news to share with you. TMZ is reporting that Malcolm Jamal Warner, probably best known for his role on The Cosby Show.
Even if it costs her everything, even if she has to stay in the shadows to do it. Because if Malcolm was right, if this really was a setup, then someone out there didn't just kill a man. They tried to bury the truth. But they may have underestimated just how loud one voice can echo when the world finally starts listening. So now we're left with a story that doesn't sit right. A man who was strong, focused, and deeply aware of the world around him, gone under circumstances that raise more questions than answers. No water in the lungs, no public autopsy, no footage of the incident. And no real explanation for how or why a man like Malcolm Jamal Warner, careful, private, and outspoken,
sitcom The Breaking news, actor Malcolm Jamal Warner, widely known for starring in the hit TV sitcom The Cosby Show,
ended up dead on a beach in broad daylight. His wife says this wasn't a tragedy, it was a takedown. And if even half of what she's claiming is true, then we're not just looking at the death of a beloved actor. We're staring straight into the face of a cover-up. One that may have involved powerful people, one that erased evidence, one that knew how to spin a story fast, before the world had time to ask questions. But here's the twist. They thought the silence would protect them. They thought the story would fade. They thought Malcolm's voice would die with him. They were wrong, because now his words are louder than ever. His wife is speaking out, and millions of people are starting to pay attention. So maybe the real question isn't, did Malcolm drown? Maybe it's who made sure he couldn't speak? And what were they so afraid he'd say?